we got over 300 applications. And so when I looked at the data from that report, I think the sample size is maybe 160 or something. So they found 160 or so minority-funded startups or whatever. I'm like, look, I got applications for over 300. So this is from the pool of people who haven't gotten funding yet. They're trying to find their way. And so I wanted to kind of figure out, okay, so what does all that say? So I had to go back through my notes and just kind of think about what did I see when I read every single one of those applications. And we went through all of them. And so I basically have this theory that there's self-inflicted wounds. We're doing things to ourselves. There are things that we can do to make our situation far better than it is right now. So that bar that's short over there that was on the right, that bar can go up just by us doing some things that or stop doing things that we have been doing and doing better some of the things that we need to do. So a couple of things I want to highlight. One is the lone wolf approach. How many people? So other people that are working on startups now, how many of you are working by yourself in your startup? Okay, keep your hands up for a second. How many of you are working or are providing the code base for what you're doing? How many of you are doing the coding? See that? Now, of the people who put your hand down, please raise your hand if you're looking for a tech co-founder. I think that's everyone that had their hand up saying they were working by themselves. That's what's killing us right now. There were so many applications that we had to toss out because we could not work with a single founder. And the reason why we say that is because by and large, when we work with single founders, it doesn't work to come through an accelerator. That doesn't mean that you can't launch a startup. But if you go through an accelerator, there's so much stuff that you have to do and so much ground you have to cover that it will break a single individual. And even if we were to find you some assistance, what you really need is the second one, which is the tech founder. And one of the things that we say a lot at DreamIt is we don't talk about co-founders. We talk about founders. If you're part of the founding team, you're not a co-founder. You are a founder of the team. And as a founder of the team, you know you're going to have to play a variety of roles. But there's two roles that we know you have to have in place. You're going to need somebody to handle the business side, and you're going to need someone, if you're working on a web type startup, tech startup, you're going to need somebody to do the coding. And that person can't do a whole lot in the very early stages besides coding. So they have to do a lot of development. They have to be thinking about not just what I need to get out the door right now, but what does this look like 6 months from now, 12 months from now? They've really got to have their stuff together. So for the people that are looking for the assistance, looking for the technical assistance, and the people that are techies and perhaps don't have the business contacts, all of you need to get together. The other thing that's out there, though, is that many of the people I speak with will tell me the same thing, and that is, I don't know where to find my tech founder. I don't know where to find them. Newsflash, it's a shortage everywhere. I just talked to some folks in California, and you would not believe the amount of money that people are throwing at individuals to stay at companies to keep them from going to startups. So the whole thing has changed dramatically. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done, and there's a lot of networking that has to be done in this space. One of the things that I'm telling a lot of the entrepreneurs that I meet is that a lot of people have been focused, particularly people of color, have been focused on finding a tech founder of color. And there's looking for a needle in a haystack, and then there can be looking for a unicorn. And it's not that we don't exist, but there's not a lot of them. And as much as people are talking about STEM education and those things need to change, all that kind of stuff, all that's really talking about is just saying that the supply is short. There's not enough of it. So here's the thing, though. There's not a shortage of engineering talent in this country for what you want to do. Now, if you constrain your search and your thinking to your local geography, and you're going to say, oh, I have to find somebody who's in D.C., or I have to find somebody who's in New York, or I have to find somebody who's in California, you might be screwed. But when you open that up a little bit and you think about it, where else can I find people that know how to do what I need them to do? Well, if you say, okay, I need somebody who knows how to write code or whatever, and I want someone who's fresh off a college campus, that type of thing. Okay. Make a list of all the schools that produce a significant number of engineers. I don't care what their background is, what their ethnicity is. Figure out where those schools are. If you do that, what you'll find is that a lot of those schools that are producing that talent, they're not all the way on the East Coast, and they're not all the way on the West Coast. There's a whole lot of folks that are in the middle. So how do you connect with somebody like that? How do you start to bridge the gap? How do you make that stuff happen? I know some people that put together their first music project, and they did it by exchanging files over the internet. They never met each other. They finished the whole project before they even met each other. We had a team in our last class who just graduated, 19 years old, all of them 19-year-olds. One of them, I met them on the first weekend. I didn't know anything about the startup, so I'm talking to him at the table, and there's this guy that was an accent, and it's not a United States type accent. It's like, you're from Britain. He's like, yeah. And I said, well, how old are you? He says, I'm 18. He came over, first time he ever left the country, he came over to work on this startup. His parents allowed him to leave school and come here. When he got here, it was the first time he met the guys he was going to be working with, including one person he'd been working with for 6 years. So they had been exchanging lines of code and working on products across the Atlantic without ever seeing each other. I mean, think about it. We're on Facebook all the time. We're on Twitter. We are using Skype. There's all these tools that are being used by people like us to make things happen, to make the connections happen. So we got to think very creatively about how we put together our teams. Poor team composition is another stumbling block. Inadequate market selection and research. And slow product release schedule. All these things are somewhat related. I'll just say this very quickly because I know I want to move a little faster. The entrepreneurs of color that applied to the program last year, and many of the people I've met since then, here's a habit. It's a bad habit. We don't think big enough about what we want to do with our startup. And so what happens is it becomes very much crystallized in our minds that this is what I want to do. This is going to work, and this is going to change the lives of this many people. And you may be right. But when you take that story in front of a VC or another investor, or even when you take that story in front of someone that you're trying to recruit to join your startup, they're weighing your idea against some idea that's going to affect this many people. And they're thinking, if I'm going to spend my time, where am I going to spend my time? If I want to make money, where do I go?